I'll come and daven. Then I have to go out of here. I
Okay.
don't care. I mean, they put me to sleep, and when it's all over, they wake me up.
Mel.
Yeah.
Are we on track to have a siyum for Megillah?
Yeah, so I was going to just speak to Mordechai, check with the lots of bagels, which she posted.
I'm going there this morning.
Okay, you'll talk with them? Okay.
Tomorrow.
Okay, so you'll give us a report. Okay? All right.
We want like 30 seats, right?
Okay. As we gather to assemble, I'm going to start the learning sponsors. And then hopefully that will give a few more guys a chance to get settled in. Okay. A year of learning, Sue and Arnie Garlick in memory of Malka Perman and Philip Mann. And Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. And Yosef Meir ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. And Yerivka Pearl Rosner bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. And in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends. In memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman Edelbat Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan. In memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gittler, Avram Meir ben Shimon and Martha Gittler, Sharna Bat Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Peres, Sarah Tova Bat Yisrael Dove. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef Ben Chaim, Charlie Galfenstein and Sam Levine. In memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata Bat Asher. Friends of Nina Moinester, Nechama Asner Bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdil, Zecher Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi. A month of learning, sponsored by Heron and Mal Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bat Yehuda Leib. B. Pizer, in memory of her husband, Harav Yisrael Chaim Ben David. Tova and Leo Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Henya Bat Rav Beryl, and her father, Aaron Ben Yosef Mordechai. Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his mother, Malka Bas Baruch, and his sister, Goldalea Bas David Halevi. I have a week of learning by Marvin Becker, in memory of his father, Yaakov Ben Meir, and by Judy Iger, in memory of her mother, Bela Bat Anshel Yitzchak. And Shema's having Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshira Shema Tzaliyah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Gaben Shtiar. Okay.
Amen.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Steve, I know you're on. Harvey, are you on? Not yet. Okay. We'll remind Harvey that on a non-touring.
Not Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
Hello, state the Gemara.
I spoke to Harvey directly about it.
All right.
Okay. So we got to the point that the issue of how to do tachanun was described in terms of the fact that Rav did not put his head down, or he didn't do a complete arms and legs out, and that was his usual custom, and therefore he did not want to move where the people were, Okay, because only in front of him was the stone floor, and apparently maybe in front of them were dirt floor or
No, you can't.
carpet, carpet, okay? All right, I don't know if you, well,
You can't bow on a bare floor, dirt
Okay.
floor, or a stone.
all right, so you're telling me therefore that those who davened in the synagogue in Curacao did not do Nefilat Apayim.
They did, they brought the.
They brought
a piece of,
carpets.
a towel
Carpet,
or a
sta- okay, so that's why in many Sephardic synagogues, you still see carpets,
They have
even
the
on
carpets lying and sitting
carpets on
around.
top of a rug,
Right.
or
Even-
rugs on top of a carpeted floor.
Because the minig is even on a carpeted floor, you put.
Could,
another carpet.
something,
But
okay.
that's not a, that's just, it's not even a minig in the sense of the kind of.
Right.
Isn't that where the Muslims got it from? Muslims got it
Of
from?
course,
Where else?
of course. And the method they bow is exactly also they got it from us.
Sure.
Okay, so, all right, so now we're on Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph. Okay, we're gonna start in the top of the Amud, B'Yom Tov Chamisha, B'Yom Kippur Shisha v'chule. Okay, so coming back to our Mishnah, indicating the differences of what number of readers there were on those occasions. As we go into the Gemara, we're going to see there's a machloket. Okay, notice carefully as we go through the machloket, the fact that who says what, I think is a little surprising, but more than that, at least it was to me, okay? But in addition, there's another element, okay? Matnit and Mani, our Mishnah is according then to whom? Lo Rabbi Yishmael v'lo Rabbi Akiva. It would seem to be neither according to the view of Rabbi Yishmael, nor the view of Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, as a Braita teaches, B'Yom Tov Chamisha. On Yom Tov, there would be 5 readers. U'B'Yom Kippurim Shisha, and on Yom Kippur 6. U'B'Shabbat Sheva, and on Shabbos 7. Ein pochtin mehen ve'ein mosifin alehen. We do not reduce the number, nor do we add the number, okay, to these. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. That's the view of Rabbi Yishmael. Now, what did we see our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah says that we, right, Ruben, thank you, right? That Shabbos you could be Mosif. Okay, so we're going to see at some point the Gemara is going to have to ask the Shaila. Okay, maybe now we see why it says our Mishnah can't be according to Rabbi Yishmael, because here he seems to be say that you can't be Mosif on Shabbos. Let's go on now. Okay, Rabbi Akiva Omer, B'Yom Tov, on Yom Tov Chamisha. They both agree. U'B'Yom Kippurim Shiv'ah, and on Yom Kippur 7. U'B'Shabbat Shisha, and on Shabbos 6. Notice the difference. Okay, right. Ein pochatin mehen, aval mosifin aleihen. Okay, on. I assume you derive that from something. Okay, all right. I didn't see it anywhere. Okay, ein pochatin, we don't do less than that, but we may add to it. Okay, all right. Mani, according to whom? Okay, Rabbi Yishmael. If we're saying that, okay, given the difference between the Mishnah and the Braita, if we're talking about our author of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yishmael, Kasha Tosefet. Okay, then we have a problem with the issue of additional readers, okay, that are permitted in our Mishnah, but not in the Braita. Rabbi Akiva, Kasha Shisha V'Shiva. Then if we say the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva, we have a problem then in terms of which days you could do 6, which days you do 7. Okay? Amar Rava, says Rava. Tana debe Rabbi Yishmael he. No, he says, according to Rava, that our Mishnah was taught according to the academy of Rabbi Yishmael, a Tana in that academy. Why? the Tana Debe Rabbi Yishmael, because a Tana in the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael teaches, Biyom Tov Chamisha, on Yom Tov 5, Biyom Kippurim Shisha, on Yom Kippur 6, B'Shabbat Shiva, and on Shabbos 7. Ein Pochtim, and there are no, we do not deduct from that, Mehan, Aval Mosifin Alehem, but we can add to that, Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. So the Tana of Rabbi Yishmael's Academy does teach something, a Braita, that seems parallel to our Mishnah.
Because in Rabbi Yishmael's name.
And he does it in Rabbi Yishmael's name, right, Alan? So therefore it makes sense now that the Gemara raises the problem, Kasha the Rabbi Yishmael at the Rabbi Yishmael. It seems therefore to be a conflict between Rabbi Yishmael in one place, namely what we saw was the earlier Brisa, versus what the Tana of the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael is saying, which corresponds to the Mishnah. Okay? So the Gemara answers, Trei Tanai Aliba the Rabbi Yishmael. Okay? It seems to suggest that there were two Tanaitic traditions based on what Rabbi Yishmael said, one in one situation, one in another. Okay? Whether we accept or like that explanation is something else. Okay, I didn't look into Rishonim, but I'm sure somebody's got to respond to that. Okay? All right, next, going on. Man Tana Laha, the Tanya, who is it? So we have a slightly new topic. Who is it that taught the following Braita? The Tanya that taught, Biyom Tov Ma'achrin Lavo, that on Yom Tov people generally come late, okay? Umemaharin Letzeit, and they leave early, okay? The Koran explanation to this was that the reason they come late is they need time to get their foodstuffs ready, and they leave early in order to be able to eat meal at a Yontef meal at a reasonable time. Okay? I'm not sure, I didn't see art school. B'Yom HaKippurim, on Yom Kippur.
This is a riot to the no Kiddush club.
Okay, we'll see. Yom HaKippurim, Mimaharin Lavo, okay? They rush, they come early to come. Uma'achrin Letzeit, and they stay late to leave. Okay, why? Because they want to be involved in the whole davening, okay, and all of the special recitation.
Because there's nothing to eat.
Well, that might be another reason. Ub'Shabbat, okay, on Shabbos, mimaharin lavo, umimaharin letzeit. On Shabbos, since their food is prepared in advance, if we're arguing the explanation of food, which was, as I say, basically Koren's approach, okay? Like in this case, their food is prepared in advance, so therefore they don't have to worry about preparing their food beforehand, but they do leave early, again, still to eat a Shabbos meal at a reasonable time. And I'll throw in because they also want to be makpid when to do shalashudas. Okay? So let's say the following, says the Gemara. Lema Rabbi Akiva. Maybe we'll say then that this particular Braita is based on the view of Rabbi Akiva. De'it le gavra yetera. Why? Because here we're saying he holds an additional person is read on Yom Kippur because it's a longer service. Okay?
7 people, not 6.
Right, that's why he argues 7 and not 6, right? Because the order of, we're going to see in a moment, the Gemara is going to argue, explain that, right? Okay. Afilu tema Rabbi Yishmael. Maybe we could therefore say even then that also this Braita of hurrying and staying, etc., could be according to Rabbi Yishmael. Why? The nafish sidura dioma. Why? Because the order of the day is longer. Okay, the service is longer due to the confessions and the supplications that are added as part of the service. Chamisha, Veshiva Keneged me. If that's the case, let's ask the question, how do we get 5? Okay, how do we get 7? Right? Keneged me, according to whom? Plige ba Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. Okay, and there's an argument with Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. V'chad da'ame, and one of his colleagues with him. Mano, which colleague is it? Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. Perhaps it's Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. Va'amre la Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. V'chad da'ame, umanu Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. Okay, and who is it? Others say it was Rabbi Yitzchak ben Nach. No, it was Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi who said it, and his
Switches the.
right, and the Baal Plugta was Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. Okay, right. Va'amre la Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, and others say it was Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. Okay, now Chad Amar Keneged Birkat Kohanim. Okay, one said, okay, it was opposite. Okay, the
Based on.
okay, connected with the Birkat Kohanim. Why? Because that has 3 phrases. And if you total the number of words, okay, of those 3 phrases, okay, it tells you it's 3, 5, and 7. Okay, okay. So that would be one option. V'chad amar keneged shlosha shomrei hasaf. And others want to say, no, it's based on the following, that you had 3 in the 2nd book of Kings, chapter 25. You have 3 guards, okay, at the gate. Then you have chamisha miro'ei pnei hamelech. And then in 2 Kings, chapter 25, you have 5 that are able to see the face of the king. And then you have Shiva Ro'ei Pnei HaMelech. And then again in Esther, chapter 1, you have 7 who are able to see the face of the king. So that's 3, 5, 7 again. Okay. Now, Tani Rav Yosef says Rav Yosef Shlosha Chamisha V'Shiv'a 3, 5, 7. Shlosha Shomrei Hasaf. 3 are for those who stand by the gate. Chamisha Mero'ei Pnei HaMelech. 5 who see the face of the king. Shiv'a Ro'ei Pnei HaMelech. And 7 who see the face of the king. But notice in this case, okay, we're still talking about a Gentile king.
Yeah, look at Taisvis.
Okay.
Taisvis argues with that.
I know. Okay. I did yesterday. Okay, so what happens? Amar le Abaye. A rabbi turns to Rav Yosef and tells him, Ad ha'idna, ma'itama lo parishlan mar? Up to now, how come you didn't explain it to us this way, so to speak? Okay. Amar le, Rav Yosef gets a little defensive, and he responds to Abaye. Okay. Lo hava yadana, it's richatule. Okay, I didn't know you needed that information. Otherwise, I would have explained it to you. Okay. Had I known you needed it, I would have explained it. Umim ba'aito minai milta velo amre lechu. Here he gets really defensive. Have you ever needed something from me? In other words, and I didn't explain it to you? Okay. Amar le Yaakov mina the Rav Yehuda. And says Rav Yaakov, says Yaakov from this location, Mina, to Rav Yehuda. Hani Shisha di Yom Kippurim. So fine, let's say we've got 3, 5, 7, okay, as numbers of readers. How about 6 in Yom Kippur? Where do we get that number from? Keneged me. Amarle, he said to him, okay, what did he say? Keneged Shisha she'amdu miyamino shel Ezra v'shisha mismolo. That's to tell us, okay, that there were 6 altogether, certain ones on one side of Ezra,
6 on each side.
certain ones on other side of Ezra. Okay? Shneamar, as it says, Okay, and if you go to Ken Chelst's class in the book of Ezra, this is what he's discussing right now. And he refers to this as tomorrow, he'll do next time. Shneamar v'yamod Ezra hasofer al migdal eitz, and Ezra was standing on a wooden platform, right? Asher asu ledavar, which they made for the thing. In other words, as a part of the, besides the Mizbeach, part of the foundation. V'yamod etzlo Matitya, v'Shama, v'Anya, v'Uriya, v'Chilkiya, u'Maasiyah al yamino, u'mismolo, and on his other side, Pedaya, u'Mishael, u'Malchia, v'Chashum, v'Chashbadana, Zechariah, Mishalem. All of those fellows. Hani Shiva Havu. They were then totaling 7.
On the
Okay.
left, 7 on the left.
So how come you said there were 6 and 6? Right? Hainu Zechariah, Hainu Mishalem. That Zechariah and Mishalem really are the same person. Va'amai karu Mishalem. So why then did they give him this other name of Mishalem? The Mishlem Ba'ovdei. Okay, because he was complete in his behavior, in his acts.
So lovely from the Shalom.
Right, the Mishlam Ba'ovdei.
And it says, the pasuk, there's a vav in front of each of the names except for Meshulam.
Right.
It's as if it's-
That's the
it's a double
kasha.
name.
That's
It's a
the
double name.
reason.
It's
How
a
come?
Meshulam.
Right? How come? Right. Okay. Tanu Rabbanim, new brighter. Hakol olin leminyan shiva, va'afilu katan, va'afilu isha. Okay, now, could have an afternoon, a whole shiur just on this phrase, and how I'm sure Art Scroll and Koren may translate it differently. Okay? So I'm going to suggest a possible translation. Okay, and if you think that it could be different, I understand. All can be counted among the number of readers, okay, for the total number of 7, including a minor, including a woman. Aval amru chachamim, but the sages say, Isha lo tikra b'Torah. A woman does not read in the Torah, mipnei kavod tzibur, because of the honor of the congregation. Okay? Now, I'm sure there are other possible translations. Okay? All right, does Art Scroll give it?
That's fine.
That was pretty quick. Okay, so basically what I tried to do, I didn't see Art Scroll for this, but I'm assuming that translation is fairly similar in this
That's
case.
He does have one comment. He says if the woman is called up, gives the impression that none of the men who have the.
Okay,
primary
that's
obligation
the
of Torah-
explanation.
Yeah, as I said, it's an explanation.
That's an
If they call
explanation.
Mrs. Schwartz, it means Mr.
Mr.
Schwartz
Schwartz.
don't know how to read.
Right.
Okay. That would be one option,
But
right?
it says emphatically at the beginning that the rabbis say this, and then the rabbis change their mind.
No,
Okay.
the halacha is one thing, but
The
the way we
Braita,
comport ourselves
Right,
is
the
another.
Braita says one thing, okay? And then the Gemara tells us the rabbis, however, were, I'm going to use the word noheg, okay, in this case, to follow a particular practice. Now, as we continue with the Gemara, we're going to see, I believe, that the Gemara is going to tell us the rabbis also were noheg, not just in regards to women, but in regards to a katan as well. Okay, so even though the Braita said one thing, that may have what been taught, what was the practical application was something else. You wanted to
The
share,
minhag in Europe
yeah,
was that a bacher's bar mitzvah was the Shabbos before the Bo Hayom.
Bacha's bar mitzvah was the Shabbos before he reached his 13th
That's
birthday?
correct. Another way, if your birthday is on Tuesday,
Yeah,
then the
your Hebrew birthday was
would
on,
be on Tuesday.
they would
So
give
he
you,
would get his aliyah and he'd do the haftarah on Shabbos before.
Okay. all right, but
But
that
that
was,
was maftir.
but that was only
I
maftir.
understand, but
Okay.
that was the minhag in Europe. It's America that moved them up.
Right, okay. But remember, that implies that a katan could do a haftorah. That was
Yeah.
the basis.
Yeah, and with the evidence, a cotton might be able to lane also.
Okay, well,
The
let's go
Shasta
on.
could
Let's
go
go on with the Gemara, because as I said, we're gonna have to touch on that too. Ibayalahu, so they ask, Maftir, Mahu Ya'aleh Leminyan Shiva. Do we include the person then, okay, who's going to be doing the maftir? And in, okay, among the 7 readers. Okay, so does that the case? Well, that would be one way of explaining it. Does the Shvi'i get what?
How else could you explain it?
That's what we do on
I know what we do, but that does,
How else could you?
I know what
explain
we
it?
do, but that doesn't mean they did it then,
That's what they're asking.
okay? All right, so what, how else could you do?
If
Explain.
you say.
So
you
one
can-
explanation is that is the 7th person,
Right.
the
But
one
what
to
other
do the,
explanation could there be?
the other explanation could be that that person still gets an aliyah, but is not considered among the 7 readers.
That's the other opinion,
Right, we'll see.
but I'm asking on this opinion.
Let's see, let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, Rav Huna v'Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. So we see there's a machloket that's being presented, going to be presented here. Chad Amar Oleh, Chad Amar Eino Oleh. One said he goes up. In other words, the 7th person is the one who does the maftir. The other says, no, he's not. He's not in the 7 readers. Man da Amar Oleh, da Hakari, the one who says he goes up, okay, is
He's number 7.
okay, that he is the one who is participating, he is reading. Okay. Uman da Amar Eino Oleh Kideula, and the one who says he does not, is not counted in the 7 readers, follows the practice, the statement of Ula. Da Amar Ula, as Ula said, Mipnei ma hamaftir benavi tzarich sheyikra b'Torah tchila. What is the basis by which the person who is reciting the Haftorah gets called up to the Torah initially, beforehand? Mipnei kavod haTorah, because of the respect or honor due the Torah. V'kevan demishum kavod Torahu, and since it is because of the honor designating to the Torah, leminyana lo salik, to the number, in other words, to the 7, he's not included. Okay? However, the Gemara continues. Meitive will challenge that. Hamaftir benavi, the one who recites the Haftorah from the prophets, lo yifchot me'esrim ve'echad psukim, cannot read less than 21 verses. Okay? What? Okay, in the Haftorah. Keneged shiv'ah shekaru b'Torah. Okay, as balanced, I'm going to say, okay, to the 7 that read in the Torah. So just as we saw, there is a minimum number of psukim reading and for an aliyah in the Torah. We're saying there's a minimum number of psukim for reading the Haftorah, okay? And so therefore, what is this saying us as to whether the person, how is this a challenge and saying that the person therefore is included,
Or is counted.
is counted? Okay,
And it
this is
should be 24.
right. So that's we're going to. Ve'im ita, if that's the case, says the Gemara, esrim va'arba ahavyan. Then we're talking really about 24 verses, because they read then the 3 from the Torah and the 21 from the Haftorah.
And the minhag in those days was to read the first 3 psukim from the next week's parsha. It was not an instant replay. That's why the 24 is
Could
mentioned.
be. Okay. All right. Kevan de mishum kivod Torahu. But since we say that it was, I'm going to put in parentheses, only a matter of honoring the Torah, okay? What happens? Right? We go on to the next Amrun. Kenegdo nami lo bai. Okay? Opposite, therefore, opposite him, we do not require it.
Just in
Okay.
other words,
So he doesn't count.
the shortest Haftorah is the 156, Segmoni Akara.
Yeah.
Only 10 psukim, not 11.
Right,
Not 21.
right,
That's the same as Noah.
right.
The Gemara's gonna talk about.
So what's going to happen? It's got to address, if we're right and you got it, and your point is correct, Alan, if it says 21 is a minimum, what do we do about the fact that there are some haftorahs that aren't?
The Gemara is going to discuss it.
Exactly, exactly. We're going to get to that. Right.
Noah could say, add
Let's go back.
Okay, so what happens? Okay, Matkifla Rava. So Rava challenges us. Vahare olo techem sapfu. But what about in a haftorah like that of Tzav? Okay, that is less than 21. Okay, Delo havya nesrin ve'echad, that it doesn't have 21 psukim. The Karinin, and we read it. Gemara says, Shani hatam the salik inyana. Why? It's different there because it, I'm going to say, completes an entire theme, an entire topic. Okay? Vehecha de lo salik inyana lo, and where it doesn't complete an entire theme, not. Va'amar Rav Shmuel bar Abba. But didn't Rav Shmuel bar Abba say the following? Zimnin sagi'in hava ka'amina kame de Rabbi Yochanan. There were times, various times, when I would say it, I'm implying a haftorah, before Rabbi Yochanan, the kihava karinin asara psukim, and when I read 10 verses, amarlan afsiku, he said to us, stop right there. Okay? All right. Makom sheyesh tugerman shani. He says, where there was a interpreter, a maturgaman present, the situation was different. What happens? Tatani Rav Tachlifa bar Shmuel, as taught by Rav Tachlifa, the son of Shmuel, lo shanu ela b'makom she'ein turgaman. That was only taught in a place where there was no interpreter. Aval, right? To do the 21, right. Aval makom sheyesh turgaman posek, but in a place where you had a maturgaman, an interpreter, that's where you could stop before the 21, because it meant, okay, how much time or how much effort, okay, or how confused could the congregation become? All of these were issues because Maturgaman had to recite after what was read. He wanted to make a quick
he
comment.
would say a pasuk, the Maturgaman would translate it into Aramaic or whatever.
When it was the
That
Torah
was
reading.
counted as 2. So when he got to full 10 psukim,
That was counted
it
totally
was
then 20,
and then he would read
one more,
pasuk,
and that would
the
require.
Maturgaman would not translate the last pasuk.
Right.
So you had 21.
That gave you 21. Okay. All right, we're on a new Mishnah. Okay. Our new Mishnah as follows. Okay. All right, now, translating this Mishnah, the first part of it, I'm going to tell you again. It may be a difference between how Art Scroll translates it and how Koren translates it. And the reason I point that out is because if you look at Rashi and you look at Tosafot, you will see they have different opinions, okay, on how to explain this phrase. Okay? Right? So at the moment, okay, I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail but we should know that the phrase pores al shma, okay, applied dividing up the text in some manner. Okay,
We still have a remez.
okay. Well,
When somebody at Myriv, after everybody's finished and walking out, and he gives a clap and he says, Baruch Hu, because he missed the beginning. That's what's left of Pores Es Shema. Initially, the way you would do it is you would say Baruch Hu, and then you read the first bracha of the first two birkas.
okay, well, you're going into, all right, I'm
And
saying,
that's what
I know,
Pores
I
Es
understand.
Shema
Oh, that's why I'm simply saying it means dividing up the initial part of the Shema section. Let's leave it at that for right now. But if you have the time on your own, I do suggest look at Rashi and look at Tosafot. They do point out that there is a machloket between them as to how much was divided, how it was done, things like that. Okay? Okay, but our Mishnah says we don't divide up,
unless
okay?
you have to.
Well, okay, and it's going to then tell us a number of other things, and all of these are going to be connected with the number that we need for a minyan, the number 10. Okay? All right. Now go on. Ve'ein ovrin lefnei hateva, implying we do not send a shliach tzibur up in front. Okay, unless we're going to get to it. Furthermore, ve'ein nosin et kapehem, we don't do the duchening. Okay, birkas kohanim. Ve'ein korin b'torah, and we don't do a public reading of the Torah. Okay, ve'ein maftirin b'navim, and we don't recite publicly the Haftorah from a prophet. Ve'ein osin ma'amad u'moshav, and we do not have people rise and sit for eulogies. Okay, all right. Ve'ein omrim birkat avelim, v'tanchumei avelim, and we don't say the blessing for mourners, or the mourners don't say a blessing. Difference of opinion here again, what that means, pshat, or the consolation to the mourner.
That's the shuros.
Okay, right. Ubirkat chatanim. Okay, and a blessing for the groom. Okay, right. Ve'ein mezamnin b'shem pachot me'asara, and we don't do zimun, blessing after meals with shame and malchus. Okay, less than 10. Right. So all of those things, all of those activities related to different aspects of worship, not just in shul, but some of them were done outside of a shul, okay? Like the shurot and things like that. Birkas Kohan, well, chasanim and things like that, okay? Now, let's go on. Ubekarkaos, okay? Tisha v'kohen. And when it comes to dealing with certain aspects of property, we still say we need 10. However, that 10 needs to include 9 plus a Kohen. Furthermore, says the text, Va'adam kiyotze bahem. Okay? And what does that mean? Well, the Gemara is going to go into that in a lot of detail, but it says, and an individual can be in.
When you say I'm going to give my value to the maker.
Okay, well, so what happens is, Va'adam kiyotze ben, and a person is fulfilled through them. Now, what does it mean, fulfilled through them? An individual says as follows. We have the point of view in the Torah where it says a person can designate their self-worth depending on whether it's a male, whether it's a female, whether it's a child, and that amount of money is given to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, it may be given to Berek Habayis, it may be given to Korbanos, things
Well,
like
that's-
that.
That's a fixed amount of time. Here
Okay.
the guy says,
Well,
I'll give a year's
hold on,
date.
all right, whatever he says, okay? So again, that has to be determined, okay, within a group, all right? And the group has to be 10, and it would seem again that it would have to be 9 plus a Kohen, okay? All right, let's go on. Gemara, Minahani Mili. How do we know this? Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The Amar Kra. Why? Because he says we have a pasuk. V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. And I become sanctified among the children of Israel. Kol davar shebikudusha lo yehe pachot me'asara. Any element or aspect of sanctification, okay, cannot be done with less than 10, right? My mashma. Okay, what is this telling us? How do we learn this? Okay, now let's look. Tatani Rabbi Chia says Rabbi Chia Atya Toch Toch. He says he learns it based, says Rabbi Chia, on a Gezerah Shava of 2 of the word Toch. Toch in one pasuk, Toch in another pasuk. And he cites them. Kativ Hacha, it's written here in this pasuk, V'nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael. I become sanctified among Israel. Uktiv Hatam, and it's written there in another pasuk, Hibadlu mitoch ha'edah. Separate yourself from among the Edah, the group. Okay, that was with the group of Korech, all right, and his crew, right? Oh, I don't know if, no.
Yes,
Korech,
the Meraglim, because there were 10, there were 12 Meraglim. You take away Yeshua and
Oh,
Caleb,
we
you
did-
have 10.
okay, wait. We get the next pasuk is going to deal with Meraglim. Okay, this is dealing with Korech.
And this, they got 3 Pesukim involved.
3 pasuk, right? We're going to get now to the next one. Okay, now he says since we had a da mentioned in that second group, how do we define an Edah? Va'acha Edah. We have another Gezerah Shava from another pasuk. Dichtiv Hatam, because it's written there. Ad matai le'edah hara'ah hazot, until this wicked group. That refers to the Meraglim. Okay? Malahalan Asara, the same way they were 10, Afkan Asara. So here too they are 10. So the word Edah therefore gives us the basis of 10, and that gives us back then to that group, to what it is defined as a group, and that tells us then how much of are needed in a group in order to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? All right. Now, right. Okay? By the way, however, remember, where was that the practice? That you needed 10? In Bavel. What was the practice in according 7 in the Yerushalmi? Okay? Yes, Sid.
I have an interesting concept here about the 10. When the Meraglim went up to Eretz Yisrael, you said you need 10, there was no Kohen among them.
Right.
Shepherd Levi was out. So why all of a sudden now you have to have 9 plus 1?
Good question.
The land that we're just looking at.
The Gemara is going to have to deal with it.
Oh,
Okay, but it's an appropriate question to say here, why in some situations it could be 10 whoever, 10 plain Yidlach, and why in other situations you need 9 plus a Kohen. Just a hint, and then we'll jump back. Okay, remember we said that land can be redeemed.
Yes.
We say also that the person is giving their value over to the Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
In both of those situations, Kohanim are involved. Exactly, Mel. So that may be something that the Gemara is going to bring back to. Okay? All right. Ve'eno sin ma'amad u'miyushav pachot me'asara. And we don't do the standing or the sitting for eulogies in less than 10, right? Notice, by the way, it jumped all the others and went right to that. Kevan de'ba'ela meimar. Why? Says the Gemara, because it's necessary, it's required to say the person who is doing the eulogy or is leading the funeral service, however, okay, amdu, he tells people, please rise, yikarim, please, those assembled, dear people, amodu, and they rise. Shavu, please be seated, so to speak. Yikarim, dear people, okay. Shavu, be seated, okay. Batsir me asara, lav orech ara, okay. Less than 10, one does not need to use such formal language in telling people how to behave, okay. So that's the answer the Gemara gives in that case. Furthermore, ve'ein omrim birkat avelim u'birkat chatanim. And it says, and we don't say the blessing either by mourners or for mourners, or the blessing by or for the grooms. My birkat avelim. What do we mean by the blessing of regarding mourners? Birkat richava. That's the blessings that are recited in the, I'm going to call it the courtyard, the public square, which is where they gathered to do the tanchumin, the suda, things like that. So just as we need to keep in mind in the time of Chazal, the same way there were birkas chatanim at the chuppah, there were birkas avelim at a funeral. We don't do that anymore, okay? But at what point it was stopped, that's a topic for another time. Okay? The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Birkat Avelim Ba'asara, Ve'ein Avelim Min HaMinyan, that we needed a minyan 10, okay, to recite those, but the mourners themselves are not included in that minyan. Okay? Birkat Chatanim Ba'asara, the blessing for the grooms is 10. The chatanim min haminyan. But the chasen can be included in that minyan. Okay, let's go on. Ve'ein mezamnin al hamazon b'shem pachot me'asara. And we don't recite the Birkat Hamazon with the divine name in less than 10. By the way, notice above when we read it in our Mishnah, okay? The language is different, exactly. There, all it said was, it says, Ve'ein mezamnin b'shem pachot me'asura. Okay, so here, Ve'ein mezamnin al hamazon b'shem pachot me'asura. Kevan de'bayla meimar nivarech le'elokeinu. Since it's necessary to say, we bless Hashem, but sar me'asara, lav orech ara. With less than 10, that's not appropriate behavior. It's not the custom. Okay, now coming back to the next part of the Gemara, really is going to touch on the question that Sid was asking. V'hakarkaot tish'a v'kohen v'adam k'yotzei bahem. We said the land would be 9 and a kohen, and the person would be similar to that. Okay, their value, their redemption, so on. Why? Minahani mili, what's the basis of that? Amar Shmuel, so Shmuel, Asara Kohanim Ketuvi, Beparsha Chad Legufe, Bechad Lemaute. There are 10 times in the verses where the phrase Kohen is mentioned. One is necessary for itself, namely for the specific understanding of the text, and the others come to exclude non-priests. Okay, ve'idach, the other, have miut, achar miut. And the others, then you have an example of an exclusion followed by another exclusion. And we have a hermeneutic principle that teaches the following, right? Exactly. Ve'ein miut achar miut, ela l'rabot. And no exclusion following an exclusion, except to include, right? Tish'a Yisraelim v'chad Kohen. And that's why we get 9 Israelites and 1 Kohen. So the Gemara is now going to raise a question. Wait a second. If you said 1 was for itself to include a Kohen and 1 comes to exclude, maybe every time then that has to work. If you've got 10, you got 5 and 5. 5 times it comes for itself. 5 times it comes to exclude. That would give me, I should have 10, 5 Kohanim and 5 non-Kohanim, right? Ve'emer chamisha Kohanim v'chamisha Yisraelim kasha. Indeed, that would make it problematic. All right, going on. Va'adam kiyotze bahem. What does that mean? Adam mikadosh is a person considered sanctified. Amar Rabbi Abahu, ba'omer demai alai, that the money is based on myself, on my worth, my value. The Tanya is taught in the Braita. Ha'omer demai alai, one who says the money is on me. Samino to ke'eved. We evaluate his worth as if he were a servant, a slave. Ve'eved itkish lekarkaot. And servants are associated with property, right? Dichtiv vehitnachaltem otam livnechem achreichem lareshet achuzah. Okay, that we say that the inheritance is given to one's progeny after them as an ongoing portion. The same way land can be,
Same way a Cohen can be also man can be.
right? Same way, right?
And Evid can be.
And same way an Evid can be redeemed. So therefore, as land can be redeemed, so a servant can be, a slave can be redeemed. Okay, I'm going to go just a tiny bit further. Matnitin, our new Mishnah says, Hakorei b'Torah lo yifchot mishlosha psukim. One who reads in the Torah should not read less than 3 verses. Velo yikra l'meturgaman yoter mipasuk echad. Okay, and he should not read for the meturgaman more than 1 verse. In other words, he read 1 and the meturgaman translated 1. Let's just go over a tiny bit. Ubenavi shlosha. And with regards to a prophet, in other words, a Navi section, he would read 3. Hayu shloshtan shalosh parshiot. Korin echad echad. And if there were 3 topics, 3 sections, he would read them one by one. We're going to stop right there. We'll pick up tomorrow. Okay, more with that. Yeah. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Reb. Thank you very much.
Sure thing. Like Kaddish, all right? Go ahead, Marty. Amen. Yes,
Grateful.
Amen.
double negative being a positive. I took the course in philosophy, and the professor said that double negative is always a positive, but there is no instance in the English language where a double positive is a negative. And somebody calls out in the back of the class, yeah.
All right, take care. Okay, Marty. Okay, you're gonna, just a quick, I'm trying to come up with a time, sometime where we could do the Chumash class, but if it, so that it doesn't conflict at the same time with the document. Give a little thought, and we'll talk more about it, all right?
After the topic, first starting is no way than 9. They used to start about 9 o'clock.
I know. And I spoke to Sid about it. We had a good conversation. I spoke to Norman about it. They both feel that 9:15, 9:20 would be too late to start it because, right, and then that's a long time to think. And then the question is, if people go to the an earlier minion, would they even come back for it?
I doubt it.
See, that's the issue. So we'll talk about it.
My brain, the thing that caught my attention
Yeah.
here today was you mentioned that the number 7 and the Yerushalmi is, is a valid number, for like, I guess
Right,
for
right.
benching.
Well, that's
saying,
what they
saying,
use.
saying Hashem's name, whatever,
Yeah.
or for a minion, or
Yeah.
whatever. So why don't we class them that way? It
Excellent.
would be much
point.
easier to get a minion that way.
You're right. You're right. And there was a discussion some years back, from what I remember hearing in the conservative movement, that they wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, but because the Bavli was the generally accepted text by which halacha was formulated, and all the Rishonim and the Achronim followed that, the Bavli's decision of 10 for the minion remained solid, and that was the issue. So it's a good question. I'm sure you're not the first to have asked it. Okay. But the I never looked at it inside the Yerushalmi, but I've seen it. Why did they choose 7? Because they said it looked like a lot of people. Okay, but it was never the accepted Masorah. That was the issue. That was the point. Why did oh, that's a very good question. Well, I'll take a minute to. Why? Because what happened was
They were in Eretz Israel and they were
right.
and
So what?
they did everything in Hebrew and
Yeah, but
Babylonians
the
were in
problem
Gullus.
the problem was that there is material that the rabbis were able to discuss and clarify in the Bavli that they were never able to get to in Yerushalmi because in the land of Israel at the time, the warfare and the decrees against the government were so severe that the base kin, that the Sanhedrin, kept having to move from one place to another. There was much less continuity and much less opportunity for the kind of discussion and clarification. So whereas the Yerushalmi, for example, has a lot more material on, say, agricultural subjects. Yes. Okay. The Bavli, where apparently the Jews were less involved in agriculture and more in commerce, has a lot more discussion on commerce, business, things like that. So as a result, the tendency became focused that the Bavli became the accepted, because that's what the Gaonim did, and then from the Gaonim, focusing on that, and then came the other Rishonim, and they all followed. That's why if you look at, for example, later, somebody like the Rosh or the Rif, who are halakhic authorities, okay, originally, okay, they were all looking at the Babylonian Talmud. That's why, for example, when Rambam came up with Mishnah Torah, and he wrote his Yad Chazakah, all the laws, what was one of the big criticisms that was addressed to him? Why didn't he cite the sources in the Babylonian Talmud? Okay, so you have one whole commentary on the Rambam's Mishnah Torah that just defends Rambam by trying to figure out what sources he used. Did he choose the Bavli or did he choose the Yerushalmi? And why did he pass in a certain way? So those are good questions.
All right.
Yeah.
You see him here?
I see him sometimes at Mincha. Yeah. Comes to Mincha Marav usually. Yeah. If you need me to, sure. Assuming that he's there, I'll be more than happy to. Take care. So welcome back. Okay. So give this to me.
Yeah. What is it? For the,
For the All right, you know what? You probably, why don't you give it into the office? And this way they'll know and they can let you know. All right? Because everything all right?
Oh, yeah.
Probably go through the window. All right. Okay. That's tomorrow. That's at 11.